Mamo Akwa, I'm right on your social so I'm saying how say GH Politics Avenue. Political stories are training because making headlines. Ne Jomre na yedi bi exum e wo ha ni dem na ho braxi mu say na dey kanya. But Maria so bet subscribe to the channel. Hit on notification bell, share na for friends so answer into me and can be ne dem na ho braxi mu yemu right simo. Suspended Chief Justice IN-Torkonoo and I may not say Supreme Court e ko tran asem no so na ensem nyina en say eye quite do as one pa a year age etumi edi abono no na o check say enke ni nyina so bia enti gabe yanka Supreme Court e mo ensem no etu na ekosi say me no ka say an application what they call it as it stands now ruling by say Supreme Court abo a year suspended Chief Justice IN-Torkonoo asem no atuomu a me no ka say court say plead what e buy no woni na so bia enti onfone nifu enye de enkofi woni sema hodo ekoso channel no so me sure say ye mo nra insim.
And our first story, the High Court Human Rights Division has struck out suspended Chief Justice IN-Torkonoo's application for judicial review. The court described it as an abuse of the court processes and for lack of jurisdiction. In a suit to the court, Chief Justice IN-Torkonoo said the committee's hearings already conducted should be declared as not happened because the committee was not properly constituted. Its processes were irregular and that the committee did not give her her day in court. Shortly, we'll talk to our court correspondent. But first, let's take a listen to the Chief Justice at her very first and last news conference.
It is this total absence of compliance with all known rules of fair hearing that has caused my lawyers to file application for judicial review in the High Court to declare all the proceedings void. Because the clear danger is that through this flagrant violation of CI 47.
IN-Torkonoo there. We'll stay on the subject now and connect with our court correspondent, Sixtus Dong Ulu. Sixtus, let's talk about the event today. Well, now, before we speak to Sixtus, let's share with you the journey so far up until where we are today. The CJ's concerns so far include the proceedings being held by the committee on May 15, 2025, where she says that should be declared null as they violated her rights to a fair hearing. Her other concern also include the fact that she's yet to be furnished with authenticated copies of the petitions against her. Remember, she makes this very clear at the news conference. She's asked the court to halt the removal processes, declare that the committee is not properly constituted, and also order caution all proceedings of the committee so far. Also, there you have it, the concern she's raised, what she wants from the court today. We know the court has thrown out the matter. The court says that it lacks jurisdiction, but also said it constitutes an abuse of court or judicial process. Joining me now is Martin Kpebu, who's a private legal practitioner. Martin, thank you so much for your time here. But what do you think about this? She hits another dead end.
Yes. What should we say?
Well, like I was asking your thoughts about the court proceedings today. We know the court has said this is an abuse of process. Alongside that, they also lack jurisdiction to hear the matter. She hit another dead end, so to speak. What are your thoughts on that? It would appear we lost that connection. With the Martin Kpebu, who is a private legal practitioner. We've been talking about the Chief Justice. Remember, she took a matter to court and hoping that because, according to her, her rights were violated, the court will hear her case and agree with her that indeed her rights were violated, and so the removal processes against her should be halted because, again, she also adds that the committee is not properly constituted, right? But we know that from what our court correspondent has been reporting so far, the court says, look, this is an abuse of our processes. We lack jurisdiction over this matter and has thrown out the case. Whether or not this means she's hit a dead end is what we're trying to find from private legal practitioner Martin Kwebu. But this is what has been going on so far. The Chief Justice has lost that case, so tentatively, because it's been thrown out of court. While we wait to reconnect with the resource persons, including our court correspondent, listen attention to something else. Really important legal matter, because the former board chair of the Ghana Airports Company Limited, Paul Addo Otre, has rejected accusations of possible involvement in a contract being probed by the Office of the Special Prosecutor for possible corruption-related offences. Now, he maintains he did not sign the said contract, as he accuses the investigative body of engaging in witch hunt. Addo Otre is to appear before the OSP later today. He has been speaking ahead of this matter on his own program.
This is what we know, and this is how it works. The board told them that, yes, you have told us what it is, but there's no real evidence. You haven't given us any evidence that, in fact, we are losing money. And then they said that to do that, we have to work with your management to come and tell you, because we need access to your systems. When we get access to your systems, then we'll be able to tell you in the things that are the revenue that's happened already. So today is July. They will take last year's revenue and show you that this revenue that you got 1 million cedis, you could have gotten 3 million cedis. This revenue that you have 2 million cedis could have gotten 6 million cedis. So the management gave them that, and then they did that. And then the management brought them to the board the second time and said that people have finished their work, so let the board hear them. So the board heard them. And then they seem to know what they are talking about. They seem to show that, yes, revenue was lost and revenue can be gained. So the board told management that, okay, go ahead, which is also normal. The board tells the management, MD and your people, go ahead and work with them and report back to us. So they did, and they went to work with them. And then we continue our meetings. I had forgotten about it. I don't know anything about it. It was Manasseh Azuri who told me that the contract had been signed by the managing director on 4th of December, 4 days or 3 days to election. And I said, well, okay, I don't know. I didn't know. This conversation is about 2 weeks ago. I didn't know whether the contract has been signed. I didn't find out whether the contract has been signed because it's not necessary. The board has finished its work. Whatever management does, if the management need the board again, they'll come back to the board.
Right, so let's hear from the journalist who's just been mentioned in that editorial by Paul Addo Otre, who's now at the center of this investigation, right? The investigative journalist Manasseh Azuri Awene responded to Addo Otre's comments, confirming prior communication and accusing Paul of failing to respond to agreed questions despite repeated promises. Manasseh challenged Paul's denial of knowing the company behind the GACL contract, claiming he had earlier admitted meeting his owners with documented evidence showing prior interactions even before board discussions. He also dismissed Paul's claim that the deal involved no payment, citing past revenue assurance contracts where companies received millions without proving any actual recoveries. Well, as the story continues to develop, remember that Paul Addo Otre will be meeting the OSP today to answer questions. We'll bring you that in subsequent broadcasts.
And we'll be taking you back to the courts pretty shortly because quite a number of developments there which we'll bring you details of. But right now, let's do politics because the governing National Democratic Congress will conduct its parliamentary primary to elect its candidate for the Aquitia by-election on August 4, 2025. Now, picking nomination forms was from July 28 to yesterday, July 30. Balloting is expected to take place today, and 3 persons picked to contest for the primaries: Henry Boache, Bernard Bediako Beidu, and Erasmus Kone Ali. The Electoral Commission, meanwhile, they've set Tuesday, September 2, 2025, for that by-election. Let's take you to Aquitia and the Eastern region to be specific, where Yvonne Nikwe is on standby with a bit more details. Yvonne, balloting expected today. Has that come off just as yet?
Well, Eric, as I speak to you, the vetting process has ended very smoothly. Balloting done. What we're seeing is a number of the aspirants, at this point we can call them candidates because they've gone through the vetting process, speaking to us, the media, about their intentions for the Aquitia constituency. What it means is that August 4, every delegate who matters in Aquitia constituency will go to the polls to elect just one person to represent the NDC in that constituency. We're seeing the national and regional executives here urging them to ensure that it becomes a peaceful internal primaries for them.
Intense primaries. Do we know in the order of which these candidates will be seeking to have delegates vote for them next week?
If I heard you right, you are asking if all the delegates would be voting.
You mentioned that balloting has been done. Do we know the order in which the candidates are seeking votes from the delegates?
Okay, so in order of what has happened here this morning, the first on the ballot is Bernard Bediakon, the second on the ballot is Erasmus Kone, and then the third on the ballot is Henry Bachi. So in that particular order, 1, 2, 3. That's how they ended up today.
Finally, on the delegates, how are you expecting all of them to partake in this exercise? You were seeking to explain that to us as well.
Well, the committee governing the process is yet to give us the official number of delegates that will be voting on Monday's exercise. We're hoping that before we leave this place, we'll get that particular figure. But of course, for everybody who voted before in the 2024 elections to elect the, as it were, Henry Bachi. Now, correction here, Henry Bachi did not go to a contest for that particular election. And so the delegates register could not be anything we can talk about. So we still have to wait for the end of the day to know exactly how many people in that constituency who will converge at Aquitia to do the voting come Monday.
Right then, Yvonne, thank you very much for those details. That's my colleague Yvonne Nikwe in the Eastern region, Aquitia to be specific, where following the unfortunate demise of the Member of Parliament for the area, NSE Al-Kumi, the Electoral Commission has set September 2 for that by-election. The NPP, they have their own candidate following an acclamation, one that received massive support from all other previous candidates, I must say, all present in the legislature where the Eastern Regional Chair of the NPP made that declaration. The NDC, they are going through a process of electing a candidate who will be on the ballot paper as a resident in Aquitia who will seek to vote and elect a new member of parliament. But we'll take you back to court because I mentioned there's been quite a number of developments there where the High Court, that's the criminal division, has dismissed an application by former Finance Minister Kenneth Ofori-Atta seeking to strike out a warrant as issued for his arrest by the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Mr. Ofori-Atta had argued that the OSP unlawfully obtained the warrant and asked the court to set aside all related proceedings, including an Interpol red notice alert. However, the court this morning ruled that the application lacked merit and dismissed it in its entirety. And if you'd recall, the Office of the Special Prosecutor somewhere earlier this year issued that Interpol red notice alert for the arrest of Ken Ofori-Atta somewhere in March. The OSP subsequently withdrew that red notice, but it didn't stop Ken Ofori-Atta and his lawyers from proceeding to court, asking that the court bars the Office of the Special Prosecutor from, in the future, putting his name on red notice amongst many other things. But the court has outrightly dismissed that. We know that the OSP has put Mr. Ofori-Atta back on a wanted list. There's an Interpol red list as well, and there are efforts underway for his extradition to the state over some investigations currently ongoing with respect to his time as finance minister under the Akuffo administration, but we're staying on the subject matter of the courts, where we're taking you there right now. On that first story we brought you about the High Court, the Human Rights Division striking out the Chief Justice, the suspended Chief Justice's judicial review request. Sixtus Dong Ulu is my colleague in court for us. Let's connect with him for a bit more details on the argument and the justification that has been coming from the court. Sixtus, talk to us. She was seeking, amongst many other things, the court to affirm that her rights were being abused by the Article 146 committee. Walk us through what the argument of the court was in dismissing her judicial review.
You are right to have put it the way you put it. And the court said that if you go through the arguments that have been put up by the Attorney General and lawyers for the Chief Justice, it cannot be said that the Chief Justice is using the court for its right purposes. And the court is particularly concerned that the issues that came before it are not matters that are within its jurisdiction. You recall some of the key arguments that the Chief Justice made, both before the court and at a press conference where he openly voiced some of the misgivings about the committee and its operation. For instance, you recall that he spoke about the way he was subjected to bodily sex. His bodily sex he described at the time as inhumane, and he said that it was not something that should have been condoned, and he thought it wasn't proper, even given the weight of the office as Chief Justice of the Republic. And so he thought that it was not right. You also recall he made the argument about not being availed the authenticated copies of the petitions as had been presented to the presidency against her. Her argument has always been that for my removal, that petition has to be received by the presidency and further transmitted to me, the person who the complaint is against, so that I can adequately respond to it. But as he mentioned in all of the press conferences and the submissions that he had made also before the court,
right.
He said that he was not granted those topics.
Sixtus, right, Sixtus, if you could kindly reposition, there's a bit of a difficulty in being able to hear your submission as clearly as possible, or possibly position in the direction in which you're speaking into the phone. You've been taking the CJ's counts one after the other, not her counts, but her relief she was seeking via that review. Continue for us. Hopefully, we can hear you a bit clearer now. Hello, Sixtus.
Hi, Mahama.
Yes. Yes, I was saying that we were struggling to hear you quite clearly. If you could just reposition, even if it's the direction of the phone, so that we can hear your submission a lot better. But you were walking us through the reliefs the CJ was seeking via this judicial review. She, amongst many other things, said her rights were being abused. Her family and the likes were not given access to the committee hearing, the manner in which she was being searched, amongst many other things. You were explaining the reason of the High Court.
Yes, and so based on those submissions that have been made by the Chief Justice publicly and
well, it does appear there's a bit of a difficulty in being able to clearly hear the Chief Justice in her submission, but we were hoping to speak to private legal practitioner Martin Pebu. He's thankfully joined us on the telephone line right now. Hopefully his connection is better. Counsel, I appreciate you speaking to us. That's the verdict of the court, dismissing outrightly the review as being sought by the Chief Justice. They make an interesting argument that the matters in which she's brought before the High Court, amongst many other things,